Hi everyone, welcome to the discussion video for the Kybalion book club series. I've been really struggling making this video because I think the general consensus of the first two, where I kind of created the PowerPoint presentation for all of us to, get an idea of the content, the summary. I got a lot of thank you. And then there was a lot of holy cow, this is so huge. The concepts are so big. And you know what? They are big. The book is teeny tiny. Look how small this book is. This is 14 point typeface. Really simple language, nothing fancy, nothing magical in here at all. Straight and to the point. There is no word that is wasted. Nothing is irrelevant. And yet it completely challenges your perspective on the world. And one of the things that they kind of drive home in the first part of the book is when the student is ready, the master will appear. And that's a saying that we've had forever. We all know that. We all say that. It's been in movies, And I think this book, or these first two videos that I made, really is only going to impact very, very few people. I mean, I'm so happy for that. But when it comes to the point of that genuine caring, that genuine interest, very few people actually have that. And for me, when I read this book, I was skeptical, because I was let me just read it. It was a recommendation from someone. Let's just see, kind of how it goes. It's not really, I'm not going to believe anything. I'm a very skeptical person. And, but at the end of the day, when you really sit back and you really look at the concepts and the principles in here, you can't really refute them. There's no basis for arguing against it. In fact, time and time again, they talk about modern science. They talk about how modern science is continually proving through the usage of the scientific method that these principles are actual fact. And when they talk about, the atom, they're well, yeah, we've known about that forever. Or vibration, yeah, we've known about that forever, centuries and thousands of years. Hermetists and occultists have known about that. It's not a secret, but for whatever reason, we're only just now really catching on. And that this is the knowledge that has been suppressed and stripped away from the world, because should we know this, should this knowledge be available to the masses, it would strip away a lot of the control and a lot of the power. Right? And I'm not trying to get all conspiracy theory, but when you think about the power that religion and governments and hierarchies and pharaohs and emperors and, it's legit power. And if you go against the system in any way, shape, or form, you're putting yourself at risk to be killed, right? During the past several thousand years, that's kind of how it goes, right? Challenge the system and they're not going to put up with it. So, it makes sense that this knowledge was taken underground and made very, very secret. It makes sense. Because in theory, if the entire world, if all of humanity abided by these 7 laws, and only these 7 laws, and lived their life accordingly, there would be no need for any other laws. All other laws are man-made. All other laws are illusionary, right? They're just illusions. And one of the things that kind of coincides with is this law of mentalism, where it talks about the world is a mental creation. The universe is a mental creation. And using the law of correspondence, it's our world, and we talk about the law of attraction all the time, our world is a manifestation of our thoughts up here, just like the universe is a manifestation of the all's thoughts. Can we understand the magnitude of that? No, of course not. But it's a window. the way that we create our world through our mind is a window to how the universe was created. And should the masses have this knowledge that we are all contributing to this consensus reality, and we all had an understanding that our thoughts created the circumstances that currently exist, then the people in power, and I'm not just talking about today, right? I'm talking about thousands of years ago. It's back the Egyptians, the Sumerians, the Babylonians. I mean, it's all of human history. Those powers that would be severely threatened, and there would be no need for them, right? So, I mean, it all kind of makes sense. And that's the thing I love about this book too, is that it just weirdly makes sense. Like, there was nothing in this book that I'm like, no, that doesn't sound correct. You know, the only thing that we can't really prove are like the planes of existence, the planes of correspondence, right? Where we talk about the mineral minds and the chemical minds. But again, even that science is proving the affinities and the preferences and the desires of the atom. Like, why does an atom electron suddenly decide to leave an atom and join another one? Well, because it wanted to, right? Or there was a desire, or there was some kind of a force at play that created that to happen. You know, like, it all has to happen for a reason. And that atoms have just as much as free will as we do, you know, again, but difference on the scale. And to me, thinking of the world that way, I mean, you have to look at day-to-day situations and say, that was a product of free will. Or, that was a product of a reaction, right? Again, the law of rhythm. Or when you hear someone negative, you're like, that person could just slide on the scale of polarity, you know, and just completely change their mindset and raise their vibrations. And it's so simple. All they have to do is just think about something different. You know, instead of being jealous of someone, they could switch gears and say, okay, well, I'm jealous of someone, so I don't like that emotion. So what's the opposite of jealousy? Okay, well, it's maybe celebration or happiness or joy for that person, and just simply choose to be happy for that person. Now, these are also simple and also basic, and I think that people who have never read this, never heard of it, and never cared to, they still practice it, right? They still have mental mastery. And the power of the mind is not a spiritual thing at all. It's just a function of this creation. It's a function of this body, and it's our human right to exercise that, right? It's no one can really take that away from us. And we've all met those people that you're like, man, how are you able to just be happy all the time? Or how are you able to just make your way through this? Or how are you not, you know, and we question their abilities, but at the same time, we truly have that ability too. You know, one of the things that really, really struck me, and I think I even repeated this in the PowerPoint presentation that I did, and I don't know exactly what page it's on, but when we're talking about the law of mentalism, it talks about how matter, energy, and force are subordinate to the mind. It's not word for word. Matter, energy, and force are subordinate to the mastery of mind. And, you know, I was curious about that because we hear of things like metal bending, you know, with our mind. You hear of these kids with these supernatural powers and they can move things or close doors or, you know, levitate or some like weird stuff, right? And I even got on YouTube. I'm like, is this real? Can people really do this? And even when you see stuff, you're like, it's just special effects. It's just whatever. But that should technically be true, right? That we can bend metal with our mind. We can create storms, like in that book, The Alchemist, at the end when has to create that windstorm, and he does. I mean, technically speaking, that's what that's saying. That we should be able to change the elements. We should be able to use the power of our mind to move and change and take one form and create some other type of form, or to change location, right? To change the molecules and the atoms and control it. I know that sounds like super offbeat and super crazy, but technically that's what it's saying. And we know that through the power of our mind, right? We call it the law of attraction. If we just sit and talk about, or sit and think about and do our positive affirmations, I even did a positive affirmation challenge for my weekly bumps, for the people that pay attention to my weekly bumps. I did this exercise. Here's 27 days of positive affirmations, and just see how much it changes your world and see how much it changes your view. And I had so many emails from people who did that exercise that were like, I see the world in such a different way, and I am now so much more mindful of my thoughts that I'm projecting out there, because I legitimately saw a difference. I legitimately saw things change. And that's not me just making that stuff up. Like, people actually sent that to me, and I've noticed that in my own world too. When I focus so much on having something or a goal that I have in mind, and then you think about it and then it happens, But we do have to acknowledge that we are living, again, it talks about the divine paradox, right? How we can't just sit there and wish, right? That's solipsism. And solipsism is a little bit too magical. It takes away our true power, and it doesn't hold us accountable for stuff. And that's a problem, I think, with a lot of the New Age movement type stuff. It's just like, oh, law of attraction, just sit and think about it. But no, I mean, there is certain things that do need to be done in this physical world in order to create things too. It's not just a matter of that, all right? Because we stub our toe, it still hurts in this world. And just because I think myself to be super skinny doesn't mean that I'm going to fit into that size 0 pants. Like, no, it's not going to, this is not going to happen. We have to still exert effort, unless we are like supernatural Superman or Mastermen or whatever. I think they call them the Superman. I'm never going to find that in the book for this video, but those are the Supermen, the ones that have that kind of mental ability. Now, I'm going to bring out something really crazy. I debated whether or not I should do this. I'm like, this is going to make me look a little crazy, and I totally admit that. But I'm going to bring it out anyway. You guys know I like to read. I had a recommendation once from someone that said, you should read The Law of One Material. And so I bought the books. Here's the first one. I'm a really slow reader, you guys. I love to read, but I'm slow, okay? Mercury in the 12th house. I just my mind can't focus for very long, so I can only read like 20 pages at a time, and that's it, right? So this book, The Raw Material, The Law of One, whether you believe this or not is completely irrelevant, okay? Totally irrelevant. But essentially what this is, it was a group of researchers who were studying telepathic communications and who, I guess you could call it like a seance, like they would participate in these energetic circles to channel information from otherworldly entities or extraterrestrials, if you want to call it that, okay? And apparently this is a transcription, word for word transcription of what occurred. There's 5 books. This is a huge study that they did. There's pictures of them. Where are the pictures? There's pictures of them doing what they're doing. If I can find the pictures, I'll show you. So like they have their, like this is them back in the 80s doing their research, And word for word, when they were done, they would transcribe the conversations. Plain and simple. It's all it is. So whether you believe it or not, irrelevant. It's just what it is. And one of the questions in one of these sessions that they had was how came about the Egyptian pyramids. We can't figure it out. We can't figure out how these pyramids were built, because technically speaking, even still today, and this was in the 80s, but even still today in 2018, engineers are like, how on earth did these get built? And the response was through the power of our mind. You're talking to eighth dimensional entities with this book's eighth density, eighth dimension. We're the third dimension. So we're talking about entities that are much, much, much more advanced than human beings are. Now, I read that and I was like, holy cow, that's what the Kybalion is talking about in reference to the subordination of matter, right? Like matter and material is just completely malleable regarding the power of our mind. And I have had multiple people, they weren't able to do it themselves, but they had attested to seeing it happen. With some shamans, they were doing, I don't know what you call it, like an apprenticeship with some shaman out in the Arizona desert or the California desert or whatever. And they very clearly said, like, yeah, I've seen cans of chili move from one side of the table to the next. Again, I know that a lot of you might be thinking that I'm a little bit crazy, but essentially that's what it's saying, right? That this should technically be possible. Even though our belief is like, no, that's not possible. It's not, doesn't scientifically make sense. It's not. But if you research, kind of quantum physics and you research the holographic universe, you know that particles behave differently when we observe them versus when we don't observe them. They behave as particles when we look at them, and they behave as waves when we don't observe them. So it's like they don't behave consistently. The particles are not really particles. We just perceive them to be particles, which is why the world is the way it is, right? We're co-creating this consensus reality through the power of our minds. If you've researched the holographic universe, you'll know what I'm talking about. If you haven't, please do that. Please research the holographic universe. Okay, I don't even know if I should publish this video now. I kind of got on a little bit of a crazy rant there. I'm going to think about this for a minute. I'm just going to keep talking. We'll see how this goes. So that's really the law of mentalism, I'm not even going to really talk about the all, because it says it's not worth questioning, and I did think about it. And for those of you who have been with me for any length of time and you ever watched any of the personal videos, I've since taken them down, but last August I did have like what I would call a major spiritual crisis, and I was very concerned for myself and for humanity of what is consciousness? What does that even mean? What is God? What does that even mean? And I went through the whole thing, it was like my entire belief system just completely came crashing down. My ideas about everything completely came crashing down. I went through this period of writing down every single thing that I could think of that I believed. I mean, pages and pages and pages of, I believe this, I believe this, I believe that, just one right after another. And I went through every single one and really asked myself why I believe the things that I believe. And most of the time, I didn't really have an answer. Like, why do I believe that it's not possible for me to telepathically move something? Well, because that's just what I was always taught. You can't do it. It defies the laws of science, right? But things defy science all the time. Have you guys ever heard of the bumblebee problem? I think that's what it's called, the bumblebee problem. Like, mathematicians cannot figure out how bumblebees can fly because technically speaking, mathematically speaking, they shouldn't be able to fly. And yet they do, right? So we defy physics all the time. We defy mathematics all the time. And there's got to be a reason for that, right? So I'm not going to talk about the all, because I think God is a concept that is not worth talking about. The creator of the universe is just not worth talking about. It's better for us to understand the laws that are at play, the law of correspondence, the law of rhythm, the law of polarity. It's important for us to understand those things more so than the why, because it's just not worth it, and there's no way we're ever going to possibly understand it, especially not at this vibration. We're too low on the scale. We're too elementary. The law of correspondence was my favorite one. That was the one that I I started to feel more connected to things. I don't remember if I mentioned him already in the beginning. If I did, I apologize if I repeat myself. But there is a physicist named Nassim Haramein. He's famous. He's very controversial in the science community, but he's very much celebrated in the spiritual community. He is the one that is championing the closing of the gap between science and spirituality. And he has some really revolutionary ideas. And in one of his talks, maybe I did already talk about him. In one of his talks, he talks about how he's compared, different entities in the galaxy, all the way from the atom to the solar system and to the galaxy, and then even further and beyond to the galaxy, the local groups, right, which is a group of galaxies, right? And they seem to all be on this one line in terms of whatever scale he was using for measurement, like energy, right? They're all like exponentially related. They're all divisible by each other. And of course, we can't really quite go smaller than the subatomic particles that we know of right now. But, mathematically speaking, we know that can get lower and lower and lower and smaller, like that movie Men in Black, right? Where they have the galaxy in the cat's collar kind of thing. It's sort of that idea. And to me, when I saw that speech, I was like, oh my God, that's the law of correspondence right there. Like, science is proving it. And it's just only going to get more proven as time goes on. And the planes of, matter and the ethereal substance, I don't really know how much it's really worth talking about all of that. Because again, it's also energy that we just don't quite understand. But when we understand that there's a progression, and we can see, okay, well, we got to go from the mineral minds, the elemental mind. There's all these different types of mind. There's even in our own 3D world, there are still people at different levels. And within this third dimension, we still have a lot of progress to go through. And, when we can talk about the harvest, the harvest or the moving into the fourth dimension is actually really talked about very, very heavily in this Law of One material. But again, I don't know if we're going to read that book. I think people still have a hard time. Let me know if you guys want to read that book together. We certainly can, as long as you're open to the idea of what the content is. And just take it for what it is, and you can be skeptical all you want, by all means. Try to disprove it, that's fine. But they do talk about the harvest, and the harvest of souls who have reached a certain vibration, which we do through our mind, that will be carried on into the fourth dimension and progress as needed. And those that don't will continue back into the third dimension, and they'll continue to recycle, right? And their lives will just continue to stay the same until they learn how to raise their vibrations. That's like the goal in life, right? The most important thing. I talk about quite often in my weekly bumps how people, or even my monthly tarot card readings, I talk about how people ask me all the time, what's the purpose of my life? What am I supposed to be doing? And a lot of astrologers will look and, okay, where's your Pluto? And, okay, where's your North Node and your South Node? And, okay, here's your purpose. This is where you're meant to go, where you're meant to be. I kind of am like, no, we're kind of misdirecting people. We're trying to get people, like, yes, those places and like, for example, my South Node is in Scorpio in the second house. My North Node is in Taurus in the eighth house. Okay, that's fine. So I'm supposed to be more financially self-reliant, supposed to be more interested in the occult, which is why I'm here, okay? And that stuff is just going to happen. We don't even really have to work for that. It just is, it's such a loud presence. Our North Node is so loud and so like abrasive that there's no, like, we can't avoid it. It's unavoidable. It's our destiny, right? Kind of thing. So it's not even really worth talking about because we know we're going to get to a different place. We know that if we get in the car and drive, we're going to end up somewhere else. But we want to make sure that we're getting to where we're supposed to go as efficiently and effectively and as quickly as possible. So the goal is to truly understand the power of what we're capable of. And according to the Law of One material, according to the Kybalion, we're capable of a whole heck of a lot more than what we're doing, a whole heck of a lot more than what we're living on a day-to-day basis. And that's just fact. And I think pretty much everyone would agree with me on that the human species is capable of so much more. And it has nothing to do with money. It has nothing to do with building things or business or none of that, right? It has everything to do with knowledge and being educated and understanding our gifts. Our goal in this third dimension is to become self-aware. And in today's day and age, with information all over the place and books, literally a button, like I on Amazon Prime, right? All you have to do is just buy now. It's like one click and it's in your house in 2 days. There's no excuse for us to not know this stuff anymore, and for us to not educate other people. And that's one of the reasons why I feel so compelled to make these videos, specifically for that reason, is because I am so thrilled to be progressing and so thrilled to be growing, but I also want to make sure that I'm doing my duty and helping others as well, as much as I can. If I can, hopefully I am. Hopefully I am helping people. Let's go on to the next one. Correspondence is so cool. That's my favorite one. And I talk about the law of rhythm all the time. The next one is the law of vibration. And I actually did struggle with the concept of the law of vibration for a long time, because I was like, what does that mean? So first of all, for those of you who don't know what it means, to raise your vibrations, if you're looking at a situation and you have an option to view it in a really bad way, and I use the jealousy example, but let's use love and hate. You have an opportunity to hate someone, or you have an opportunity to love someone. The positive is always the higher vibration. Always the higher vibration. So to go from hate toward love, you are raising your vibration. That's what that means. That's why positivity and positive affirmations and all these, self-motivational speakers, that's what they're all trying to do. They're trying to raise your vibrations. If you've ever gone to like a Tony Robbins type event, that the energy in that room is like so real. You can feel it. You can feel the excitement. You can feel the joy. You can feel the happiness. You can feel the enthusiasm that people have. And it feels so good. That's the thing, is we can have that all the time as a collective. If that's what we really want, we can absolutely have that all the time. So that's what raising your vibration really means. Now, I had an experience that I wanted to share with you guys. I'm doing my Bikram yoga pose, my first one. I was in Bali last year for 6 months, and it was I've talked about it so many times. I was sexually assaulted, and it put me down this really dark spiral, and it just kept getting worse and worse and worse. And it was like one thing after another just kind of kept happening, and I was really lonely, and I wasn't connecting with anybody. I had no friends. It was just like one of those years, and everyone had 2017 like that. This video is going to be up on YouTube for a long time, so not everyone. Last year is maybe not last year for wherever you are now. But I started learning. This is when I started learning about all this stuff. And I had what I called, my initiation, kind of thing, a moment in time. That's what my sexual assault really was. It was a wake-up call. It was a trigger, right? Wake the heck up and start learning, because you're going to end up in a really dark place if you don't change your life, if you don't change how you see yourself, if you don't change your level of self-respect and your level of self-love, because it just gets worse from here, kind of thing. And that was a manifestation of never really healing from a really bad empathic narcissistic relationship that had ended a couple years before, and just kind of avoiding it and living in denial. Oh, I'm going to go out and date and meet someone else and no problem, never dealing with it. So during my study process, I learned a lot about meditation. I did a lot of that, and it drove me crazy because going to yoga class was like torture, because I could not calm my mind down. Like there was no way my thoughts would ever stop. And it was like a 9 of Swords. For those of you who don't know, let's pull out the 9 of Swords. The 9 of Swords situation, like every single day it was like this, right? So meditation was really tough. But I kept trying. I kept doing it, you know. I knew that it would get better because people told me that it would, you know, and I trusted a lot of people. So I kept going. And then one day someone had mentioned, like, have you ever done a past life regression before? I was like, what the heck is that? I don't even know what that means. And she's like, just go on YouTube and find like a meditation or a hypnosis thing and just click through to make sure it's safe and make sure that it's good and that the person's saying good things. And just put your headphones in and just see how it goes. So I was like, okay. So I did. And the first time I did it was truly an experience of vibration. I'm bringing it back now, okay, to vibration, because by the end of that meditation, my entire body and the bed below was covered in sweat. Like I was literally creating heat during that meditation, and I was just laying there. And there was no reason, like it wasn't hot. I had my air conditioning on. I didn't even have my covers on. Like it wasn't an external heat being created. I was literally generating heat with my mind, right? And heat is a higher vibration. You know, when your body temperature rises, you sweat, and that's what was happening. And I didn't really make that connection because at the time I hadn't read the Kybalion yet, so I didn't really know what that was. But now I know, like, we can, I don't know whatever you call it, but when we use our mind so intensely and so, I mean, I was deep and I was having these visions that are just like, were unbelievable. And I remembered a lot of things during that first meditation. A lot of stuff came to me and it was very clear. Like it was like, oh, I'm time traveling. I'm like remembering things as though it was yesterday. You know, at the time I was like, it's just my imagination. I just made that stuff up. It was because I saw something on TV or whatever it was. But now I realize what that was I was connecting with something through my mind. And by doing so, my vibrations were really, really high. And that's why I was sweating so much. And so as we become higher vibratory entities, and again, in the PowerPoint presentation, I talked about the spinning. I used the picture of the moon, right? Spinning, the moon spinning. But we have an object that spins, and it spins faster and faster and faster and faster. And then we start hearing like a tone, a low tone, and then it gets higher and higher and higher. And then once it kind of stops with that, then we start feeling the heat, and then it gets hotter and hotter and hotter and hotter. And then it just keeps spinning faster and faster. And then we start to see a red glow emitting from that object. And then it goes from red to orange to yellow, all the colors of our chakras, right? And then all of a sudden it goes into a level of vibration that we can't even comprehend at this particular point in time. We can't even understand it. And that's what that means. Technically, we have that ability to do that. Maybe not today, right? But that's the goal. That's the journey ahead of us that we have. So that was a beautiful chapter too. I mean, these are all wonderful chapters, and they really, really do open our minds to a new way of seeing our existence. Let's see, polarity. I kind of already talked about this. The jealousy or the love-hate things, even the difference between the infinite mind and the finite mind. You know, there's all kind of different, it's all a scale. Everything's on a scale. Everything is on a scale. And we can only convert things on the same scale, right? Heat can only become cold. Love can only become hate, or vice versa. Sadness can only become joy. You know, it's that sliding scale. And it helps you that when you're experiencing a negative emotion or you have a negative thought in your mind, to connect with like, okay, what's the opposite of it? What's the opposite of that negative thought, that negative idea? And how do I gravitate more toward the positive than to stay festering in the negative? Some people are better at that than others. That was a lesson that I really had to learn on my own through the hard work. You know, it wasn't something that I was was naturally kind of born with. I was just in Miami, and I had a lunch with this guy who I've known for about 4 years, and he's like he's a really good guy. Still, has a lot of growing up to do. He's kind of caught a little bit in the material side of things, I think. And I think he's actively working to really discover, because we had this beautiful conversation about like him, like, I feel like I have more, that there's something more that I'm supposed to do. And he was telling me about a friend of his who was overweight, and she was always complaining about how overweight she was. And he's like, okay, well, she had asked him for a gym membership, in South Beach, like a referral, right? Gym trainer, whatever. And he's like, well, here's the information. And she's like, oh, well, I'll start on Monday. And he told me that he looked at her and he's like, but it's Wednesday. And you can go tonight or tomorrow, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Like, you say you want to lose weight, but you're going to wait till Monday? Like, that's up here. And I remember him pointing to his head, like, this is the mind right here. And he pointed to his third eye. And, it's true. And I think all of us would really agree with that if you really truly want something and you're truly aligned with something, then you just go do it, right? But if you're not aligned with that, then it's going to make it harder. And it is through the power of the mind that we can slide on that scale. And it sounds so simple, and it is. It's so basic. But the process of doing it and being aware and being conscious of it, that's like a whole different story. Not everyone is that way. I think a lot of people watching this video are that way. But you have to be compassionate, because not a lot of people have these types of lessons. And not a lot of people have had the examples that a lot of us have had. Like, I've had really parents that were very successful and very intelligent, and they were able to travel the world and do whatever they set their mind to. And so they did pass that on. And I remember I was 16, I was visiting my father. He was living in Montevideo, Uruguay at the time. And he made us read this book called Mind Power. I was 16 and was lucky enough to have that experience, right? And to have parents that taught me that kind of stuff. But not everyone is so lucky. A lot of people in this world, we're talking billions and billions of people in this world, would maybe listen to this type of video and be like, what the heck is she talking about? Like, what? It sounds like crazy talk. It does. It can sound like crazy talk if you're not taught or raised, or if you don't have an open mind, kind of thing. And someone had inquired in one of the comments in one of the videos that said, I'm really interested in learning how to use laws against laws. Well, this is the law of mentalism, is kind of the pillar, right? That's the one that is really controlling all the rest, because it's through this that we can slide on that scale. It's through this that we can raise our vibration. It's through this that we can jump off the pendulum with the rhythm, which I'll get to in just a second. And that's really the one that we can use the most. But they all do kind of correspond. So let's continue to the next one, which is the law of rhythm. This one is still one that I think that we need to broaden our perspective to really think about all our lives. And according to the planes of correspondence, we've lived millions of lives. We've ascended up the scale from the most simple forms of matter, and we've gone through maybe the minerals and the plant world and the animal world. Maybe we've really had lives in all of those kinds of vibrations and those kinds of levels of consciousness. And now we're sitting here at third density, and now we're becoming self-aware. Now we're becoming aware of consciousness. We're becoming aware of the all. We're becoming aware of the universe and the other forces at play. We can understand the energies that push and pull us and affect us, And so now we are given the gift of being able to step off the pendulum. Now we're being able to say, okay, I'm having a really great time, and I don't want to be affected by the law of compensation, which means, okay, well, as much as it swings to the right is as much as it's going to swing to the left. So I'm just going to stay here. I'm going to get off the pendulum and just let it go backwards. And anyone that's not aware, that's right now, at the time of making this video, we're going to be having Uranus entering into Taurus, right? And so people that aren't mentally aware or prepared, or who haven't done the inner work, like there's a lot of people that are really going to struggle with that transit because they just haven't done what really needs to be done in their life. And so those who are aware that the pendulum is going to start swinging backwards, they're going to be able to just stay and just polarize themselves here. And then as it kind of comes backwards, they'll be able to sort of take advantage of that swing upwards, and it's going to push them further, kind of thing. So again, the power of the mind, to not let the lows bring you down too low, but also not to let the highs bring you up too high either, because the higher they rise, the harder they fall, right? And the goal is to remain neutral. They call it the law of neutralization, to remain neutral. And we may feel like, yeah, but that doesn't feel like happiness. It doesn't feel like we really care. It doesn't feel... But really, that's like what Zen is. Zen, that's where true happiness is to not be on those swings, but to have stability. And I say in my readings all the time, peace and tranquility are very undervalued in our society. We're so focused on the fun. But the truly happy people are the ones that have lives that are like this. Those are the truly happy people. I don't think that they're bored. We would think that we would be bored with a life like that. But in reality, that's not really what it is. And those are technically the people that we would say are the men on the mountains, They're the true hermits of the world, the ones that have that level of wisdom and put that wisdom to practice, right? Because the hermit or the master, I'm going to pull the hermit card out. It's amazing how tarot is so connected with everything that we talk about. The major arcana are like the secret hiding places of these hermetists, right? They hid this information in this artwork. Now, this artwork is relatively new. It's not technically from ancient Egypt, although there are theories that a lot of this artwork did come from ancient Egypt. And maybe not this artwork exactly. This artwork is not, it's from like the 1800s, I think, or early 1900s. But the idea, the concept of it, the connection with the number, right? The number 9, the lantern, the old man, the hermit, it's all related. It's all interconnected. And I'm going to be doing a video and actually a collaboration with another tarot card reader, Shooting Stars Tarot, and we are going to be talking about how tarot is related to the tree of life from the Kabbalah, or the Kabbalah, as we like to say here in the West. And that is, again, also all interconnected. It's connected with Egypt and all of that. So here are the people that have Zen in their life, truly the men on the mountain, the ones that understand. The ones that understand. And the law of rhythm is the thing that kills us. And when we really think of it from lifetime to lifetime, it's not just in this lifetime. Remember the guy that, I told you about being in South Beach, like use your mind, it's power of your mind. We went through his chart and I was like, he's one of the happiest, luckiest people I have ever met. Okay, so he's Sagittarius, so he's Jupiter ruled. His birthday is the 21st, so 2 + 1 is 3, which is Jupiter. He has Jupiter almost exactly on his ascendant, like 1 or 2 degrees off of his ascendant in the sign of Virgo. He's like Jupiter, 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 and it shows in his life. Like, life for him, he'll even tell you, like, I've had the luckiest, most amazing life. Like, I've had no problems in my life. And I got to thinking, I'm like, either he's really like becoming more and more of a master. He's becoming more and more like that. He's more and more mature. And of course, he doesn't remember his past lives because we go through this forgetting process when we return or come back to this density. But Like either he's like that and he's progressed a lot farther than maybe I have or a lot of other people have, or he's on an upswing. And if he's really on an upswing where things are just like, ooh, like super easy, free falling, no problems, then he's going to have a really tough backswing in the next life. And he's not going to know why. I don't know where he's at, of course. I have no idea. But I did talk to him. I was like, well, just make sure that you don't let the highs bring you up too high, just kind of everything that I just said. That was a very interesting conversation. I've never met someone so lucky before in my entire life. I mean, like an amazing life. He rode the Concorde when he was like 13 years old. He's traveled all over the world. I mean, literally, there is not a place in this world that he has not been. It's unbelievable. The law of causation. This is one that science certainly supports left and right, the law of cause and effect. If we lived our life according to cause and effect, could you imagine how much better the world would really operate? Like if we really lived according to this principle on a day-to-day basis. And the problem is that we don't, and I think I said this in the presentation, was we don't always see the effects right away. And one of the problems is if we don't see the effects right away, we don't necessarily make that direct link. So we can really screw ourselves over and not even know it and not even really know why. Again, a benefit of awareness, a benefit of consciousness, to understand the effects. And before an action takes place, we think it through. Could you imagine if everyone thought it through? I think of the road rage people. Like, could you imagine if the road rage people thought it through before they pulled that gun on someone, or before they got out of their car and started bashing in their windows with a baseball bat or something? Like, a little forethought on that would have been really beneficial, because it's totally not worth it. And not, energetically taking advantage of people and not emotionally taking advantage of people. Because there are consequences. There can't not be consequences, right? Law of compensation, law of rhythm, law of cause and effect. I mean, if these things take place in a physical world, then of course we're subject to them. We stub our toe, it hurts, And the law of gender. This was very confusing for me when I first began. The concept of gender, the concept of masculine and feminine. And I had to do a lot of meditation on this one. I did, and a little bit of research and watching YouTube videos and a couple other things. I had a conversation with I met a couple friends in Miami, and we were talking about the masculine energy in the world. And I said, look what happens when you allow men to run the world. And he kind of laughed, was like, that's such a feminist or such a woman thing to say. But it's true. Right? The masculine energy has been in charge of the world since documented history, right? And look at the state of the world. When has there not been some form of slavery or some form of genocide or some form of, whatever? And then he's like, well, would it be better if women ran the world? And said, no, of course not. It might not be the same types of problems, but there would definitely still be a great deal of problems. You really genuinely need both. And I had another conversation several months ago with a woman who's like my mentor, my spiritual mentor. And she said, men or the masculine should be begging women to be equal, begging the feminine energy to come back into society, begging, because look at what's happening. Literally, this world is in a state of chaos. And it's because of the lack of balance between the masculine and feminine. I'm not just talking about men and women. Like a lot of the energies around us are masculine, like war especially is a masculine energy. The boys clubs, I could go on and on and on. I'm not going to waste your time, but when you really, really think about it, you need the balance of both. And when in society has there really ever been an equal men, women, masculine, feminine type of concept? I don't know as a collective that's ever really been, unless I'm not a historian by any stretch of the imagination, but when has that ever really occurred? I know that women played a very significant role in Egyptian times, and there were times where there were females in control, and that there was kind of a back and forth between patriarchy and matriarchy, but at the same time, again, the lack of balance, right? Rather than utilizing the forces to the best of their benefit. Now, again, I'm not just saying men and women because gender is different. It just manifests as sex as our bodies, but I'm just kind of using that as a little bit of an example. They talk about the atom, right? The protons, the positively charged subatomic particles, are masculine energy. They are the ones that attract the negative, the electrons, the feminine. But it is up to the feminine. The feminine really is the one that chooses, okay, well, I'm going to be a part of this atom, or no, I'm going to be a part of that atom. And there's a creative force that happens with the feminine, right? The feminine is the creativity. The feminine is the more versatile. The masculine is the one that directs. He's like the higher up, the one that says, okay, now we need to accomplish our purpose. And the feminine is like, okay, well, let me make it happen. She's the creative force, the creative energy. And so let me pull out my tarot cards here. And, essentially the creation idea manifests itself in absolutely everything. In human form, it's, the creation of life. But we cannot have life without men. We cannot have life without women. We need both. And I think the problem is, or the problem was, this is just a theory, an idea, right? Let me go back to this might be a little bit sexist, I don't know. I'm not trying to be like all political. It's just observation, right? And really talking about how this kind of stuff manifests on a day-to-day basis. I felt like I heard a myth or a story where women were revered for ages because of their ability to create life. And it was like seemingly came out of nowhere. All of a sudden, a woman was with child and she was literally creating life in her womb. But then men figured out that she couldn't do that unless she had her sperm. And then all of a sudden the men kind of took control and said, well, you couldn't have it unless it was for us. But again, we need both. Like, there is no one that's better than the other. It makes no sense. And so here we have the masculine and the feminine force. And she is, of course, in the garden. She's the nurturer. She is the womb. And, it also talks about how the universe is the womb. We are living in kind of a feminine environment, but that is directed by the masculine, the will of the masculine. In this other book that I'm starting to read as well, this is the next book club book, which is going to be the Essential Zohar. This book talks about the creation of the universe, and I'm so excited to start talking about it because it's like, well, physicists and scientists think that it was like this big bang. It's like, no. God created the womb, and then this womb, or this entity, this space, suddenly kind of took on a mind of its own. The way a child becomes its own entity, it is its own person, it is its own thing, and the way that kind of an adolescent sort of rebels against its parents. It's like, I don't need you anymore. And then when it realizes that it didn't need God and that there was this separation, like, I don't need the masculine, right? It's like, no, please, I need you back. And then, okay, well, then it comes back in the way that, a balloon pops, it becomes so forceful and the energy is just the pressure. And that's kind of what we're calling the Big Bang. But in essence, the universe had already been created, and it was just that process of love and light, okay, love and light re-entering into the universe that created this spontaneous combustion that we call the Big Bang kind of thing. And I don't remember, I'm not saying it verbatim. We'll get more into it when we do that book, but essentially that was it. And it's the combination of masculine and feminine, and what happens when one is stripped away or rejected, when the feminine is rejecting the masculine, well, then it can't survive, and then you need the masculine back, right, in order for survival. You truly need both for survival. And the only thing that is devoid of that is God himself, or the all itself. And, even scientists, mathematically believe, not all scientists, but a lot of them believe that we are part of a binary star system, meaning that our sun is also orbiting around another entity. And I think it's a brown dwarf, like a dead, I don't know whether it's like dead essentially, but it's like we can't see it, right? We can't see it, but it's so huge that it does have its own gravitational force. And we're kind of going like this, which most systems in the universe, or in the seeable universe that we can see, are just like that. They're binary star systems, and they rotate around one another. And, well, there is a masculine and feminine thing right there. Gravity itself is a manifestation of masculine and feminine. The gravity is two forces, an upwards and a downwards, as here we say on Earth, but it's opposite directions, just like a female inward, a masculine outward, kind of thing. So gender is critical. And now that you understand it, and now that you can kind of begin to really wrap your head around what that gender really means, and you can begin to see your own creative forces, because in gender, it's the internal masculine and feminine as well. The masculine is the will, like I said, the will, the one that commands. And essentially it's more driven. The feminine can kind of go in so many different directions because it is so versatile, but the masculine is more one-minded, and can see that in men too, right? So focused, right? And women are I've got 20 million things going on in my mind, no problem. I'm joking, of course, I'm making a little bit light of it, but that's kind of how it is. But you need both. You can't just sit there and think of all the amazing things that you can create, but if you don't have the will to do it, then it's nothing, and then you're living in a dream world. Right? Or you can have all this will and no creative desire without the feminine. It's okay, well, then you're just going to be like a Mars quality, just kind of clumsily plunking along in life with no real contribution whatsoever. And the feminine in our society is so nurtured, right? We are we call them the sheeple, right? In the truth world with all the conspiracy, we're just sheep being herded. And it's because our feminine is so developed and so celebrated, or whatever it is, that the people who have masculinity, who have that power, are then directing the people to do what they want. And then we have the powers that be controlling people, because we are out of balance. As a global community, our feminine is too strong, and the powers that be, their masculine, is too strong. And so we have that societal aspect too. And again, in this book too, I forget which chapter it's in, but with mental transmutation, not only can we transmute our own minds to go from one end of the spectrum to the other, but we can do that in other people too. We can do that in other people too. We can mold the minds of other people, which means it is even that much more critical that we are in tune with our own minds and we learn how to think for ourselves. Because if we can't think for ourselves, then this is what happens. This chaos in the world, this is what happens. And when people are just carrying out orders, doing what they're told, without actually thinking, is this right? Is this good? Is this moral? They just do it without really considering the consequences. But those actions have consequences, whether you're told to do it or not. Like, you're going to be the one that pays for that. Just because you haven't developed your masculine and feminine and developed that balance doesn't mean you're not going to be held accountable for it. So you're being held accountable for stuff, even if you don't really know or you're even aware that you're going to be held accountable for it. It's like big stuff, right? It's no joke. It is no joke type of stuff. The mental gender, the I am, kind of we went through that. The I am, the me, okay, masculine and feminine. I didn't really use those words, but I was trying to talk to it about it in more simple language. I think that's pretty much it. I'm going to leave you guys with that. Been talking for like an hour. I said a whole bunch of crazy stuff. If you made it this far, I thank you so much. Let me know if you have questions. If I may have misinterpreted something, say it diplomatically, please. But, contribute. I really hope that you do contribute, because this is a process for all of us. We are all on this exact same journey together, and it is up to us to help each other through the process. All right. Thank you guys so much. Take care.